Where is the cookie?
I'll tell you something after. All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Roll call shows that we're missing Michael, but everybody else is here, so that's good. Now it's time for open forum. Is there anyone receive any communications? Anyone want to say anything? Yep.
I've got two here.
Okay.
Oh, online?
Yep.
Okay.
This first one is from, gonna take these off, Janet Dittmanson. I want to commend the city employees for the great job they're doing on keeping the walkways clear and the corners open for safe pedestrian access throughout the downtown area. However, I'm finding it increasingly difficult to walk to the Grand Marais post office with piles of snow getting higher between Johnson's parking lot to the corner of the Grand Marais State Bank. I now have to choose either to cross Highway 61 without the crossing lights, climb over tall snowbanks, or walk along the highway to get to the post office. None of these options feel very safe. Please consider clearing the walkway and opening the corners so that pedestrians can have safe access to the Grand Marais post office. Thank you, Janet Dittmanson. And the next one is from Todd Miller. To whom it may concern, my deepest gratitude to the hardworking visionaries at the Creative Collaborative. I only participated for a short time a while ago, but felt very inspired by their work. At that time, I expressed my belief that there is an urgent need for kiosks to help promote local arts and cultural events. As the board chair and founder of the Grand Marais Music Collaborative, and as a lifelong musician and as a musician in Grand Marais for over 20 years, I can't express the need for informative kiosks enough. Through simple posting of small notices, local musicians and community event organizers can inform a great number of visitors and locals about their events. We currently use hard-to-find billboards all over town in more out-of-the-way places like the retail establishment and entrances, the backs of parking lot signs, some of which are now gone or will be gone soon, and in the windows of supportive local businesses. I can say from personal experience, even though these locations are out of the way, this has meant the difference between an unattended event and a well-attended event. The practice of freely posting notices about a cause or event is as ancient as the written word. Well-placed kiosks would enhance and reinforce Grand Marais' small-town character, as well as perform their primary function in form of current events. The primary and arguably sole function of these kiosks then should be to inform of current events and wayfinding. I'm concerned if we get too embroiled in arguing over the interactive statements on the kiosk, we could endanger their timeless, neutral, utilitarian purpose. Everyone should feel safe to post a notice. I'm concerned that in the letter sent to the city, there's no mention of the public's ability to post notices on these kiosks. Todd Miller, resident, Grand Marais. That's all I have.
Okay. Come up. Yeah. For a public comment.
If you could adjust that microphone a little bit.
We don't need it straight up in the air. You're not that tall.
We got a giraffe.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Hi, Linda Jurek, Executive Director of the Cook County Chamber of Commerce. I come to you today with that hat on, not the Visit Cook County hat on. And I'm coming to talk with you, to express my concerns about the deplorable condition of our alleys in downtown Grand Marais. Little history on that. I came to the city last fall with a petition from all the businesses on our block. That would be the block between 1st and 2nd, Gunflint Tavern, Dairy Queen. And we were working toward getting that alleyway improved with pavement. Didn't happen. It's not like it's not going to happen. It's still out there. It's just that we ran out of time last fall. During those conversations, we talked about the snow removal, and I talked about the snow removal a lot because I wanted to make sure that we were doing it right this year with our new pedestrian walkways and the new enhanced downtown. And I feel we are, so commend the city for that. It's really nice to be able to walk on a sidewalk in the winter and not out on the highway. And so I will say thank you to that. However, I got a visit yesterday from Cassidy Getchus of the Gunflint Tavern. And for all of you, we clear our own block. We meaning Visit Cook County contracts and all the other businesses contract to have snow removal. At the time of our discussion in the fall, I said, well, we talked about snow removal with the enhancement of pavement in our block. And I was told by Administrator Roth that the city can abandon alleys if they wish to. I feel it's really important that these alleys don't get abandoned by the city, that they are kept up in the winter for a lot of reasons. When Cassidy came to me yesterday, it saddened me that his first contact from the city upon the removal of the snow that he was taking out, putting near the sidewalk, hoping that then the city would scoop up the snow from the alley, was a call from the sheriff's office. When I, in fact, feel that if we are going to build community, a simple tap on the door by either our mayor or our city administrator to say, hey, let's talk about solving this problem without going to a punitive phone call from the sheriff's office about where he was moving the snow, does nothing to build our community. Lastly, I had a phone call with Sheriff Pat this morning, and we talked about the fact that if something were to happen in the alleyway where there was a need for an emergency service, the alleyway in our block right now is like completely mashed potatoes. And like my car would get stuck, but that's not saying a whole lot. There's a lot of cars that would get stuck. And I would just ask, and I will put this in writing as well, I just didn't have time today. It kind of cooked up in the last 24 hours. I will put this in writing to all of you, that I believe the city should consider keeping the alleys clean in downtown, including the alley on this block. Whatever alleys that need to be cleaned in downtown should not be abandoned in the winter and should not be contracted. We need the heavier equipment that the city has to remove the snow in those areas. And I just don't think you can have it both ways. You can't refuse to do the maintenance and the snow removal and then expect to have a positive outcome if something does happen. And it's going to come back to the city in that direction. So with that, you'll hear some more from me in writing, and I would hope that in the future, in one of future meetings soon, because we're going to get more snow and there's a lot of it out there, that we could work on that and also work on better communication with our business owners downtown in what to do and where to put the snow. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Anything else for public comment? Seeing none, close the open forum. Move on to the consent agenda. Now, our consent agenda for tonight has the typical 3 items on it. I would like to add a 4th item to that consent agenda, which is the application for on sale wine and beer for the Fisherman's Daughter new owners. Can we do that? We can do that, right? Just toss it on there? So I'd like to add that as number 4 on the consent agenda. And if anyone would like to pull anything for discussion, we can certainly do that. Otherwise, I would entertain motions to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent agenda carries. Move on to the Creative Economy Collaborative. So this is our kiosk conversation, which we had a public comment about. So come on up. Counselors, you will find in your packet some visuals. I know that Richard has some visuals for us as well. And a little bit of background on this. This project, talking specifically about the kiosk, is almost as old as the Highway 61 project itself. It has been going on I have been a part of the conversation for this for most, if not all, of my tenure as mayor, to discuss its different designs. The iterative process for these has gone through, I'd say, probably about 30 different stages, talking about materials, talking about design, talking about service levels, talking about coverage space, locations, etc. So I believe what we're going to hear tonight is going to be a very well thought out presentation with designs that have gone through the ringer a lot of times and have gone back to the drawing board many times as well. Some of these designs were also informed or originally designed by CJ Fernandez, and then tweaked from there. So that's my introduction for it. You guys can take it away from there.
Well, maybe Jay, you could speak to why it was taken out of the highway department's funding. I understand some of it, but I don't understand all of it.
Yeah. So I mean, we jump in for sure. The discussion has moved. It wasn't taken care of as part of the actual construction project because the bid numbers that came back from the MnDOT project were really, really high. And so in essence, what we're doing here is we took this part out of the plan because the designs that we identified could be done much cheaper using different resources than what MnDOT had offered. So what we're going to see is we're going to see a number that is, I want to say ballpark half of the cost of what the MnDOT bid numbers were for the same number of kiosks, same materials, same construction, using more local resources, more local workers to accomplish the goal. So that's my summary of it. I don't know if I missed any parts of it, but
Well, is there when it was pulled from the highway project? What was the city's understanding about how these would be financed? Just so that I can speak to what we're going to be asking for, if you will. Like, is there money for these kiosks in some pot, or would you just raise those funds through either the park or the city general budget? Or I'm just curious because
I can't specifically remember. I don't know if, Mike, you have a better memory of how we identified the funds for the kiosks. I know that I can remember when we had the brainstorming budget conversation, and there were stick-it notes on that big sheet back there. There was money that was identified for kiosks. I can't remember what color those stickers
yellow
were.
or
If they were the monies that were coming from, like what source those monies were coming from.
Okay.
Do you have a better recollection of that?
Well, you're the sources the money is coming from.
Okay.
I can.
City
add
money,
to
yeah.
that when the kiosks were pulled from the project, they had gotten to the point of it was on the board within the KGM construction MnDOT project list. So the design was there, and they were going to outbid, or not bid.
Bid out, yeah.
Bid out, bid out the project. So it had gotten that far, and then was pulled back because we thought it was an astronomical price. At that time, I understood that the money was there because it was already in the project. We were just gonna pull it back and try and source it out locally.
Yeah, I'm, especially on the budget that was provided, or that I've seen for the kiosks, I do believe that it is, it's well within the understood budget of what the kiosks would be costing, so.
Thank you for that. We've all been concerned of our efforts to keep this thing rolling, that they get built somehow. And that's partly why we're here. We'd just like to maybe update you. You've seen the visuals that were sent from both CJ, well, they're mostly CJ's work. I had a tiny little foam core model that is at my door at home. I forgot it, sorry. But I think the visuals pretty well speak to it. It's a walk through Corten steel and wood slatted panel with ultimately 4 sides of the kiosk that can have informational panels on it, interpretive informational panels on it. And we chose, there were 2 different kiosks that CJ designed. One of them did not, only had virtually 2 sides of informational panels, and they were much smaller than this. And we as CEC opted to just, let's just do 3 of these instead of 2 of the other one and 1 of these, because they contain much more space to accomplish what we think might want to live on them.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've got our list of things that we think are going to be appropriate for information on them. I take Todd Miller's point about paper posters and trying to post those things to heart. We've had those conversations in the CEC as well. We can always talk about that. But we see it as consistently on each of the kiosks there will be a map showing where you are and what parts of town are close by. Nothing less than evergreen as much as we know how to make it. We're not going to identify businesses, maybe hospitals, school, YMCA, downtown, that kind of thing. But
East Bay, Harbor.
right.
So just
Yes.
geographic.
Yes.
Essential services, maybe? Is that what
Right.
you're looking at?
I guess you could
Hospital?
call it that.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. We don't want to have to change this out every 5 years or something when something changes. There will be, where's that list? We definitely want to include Anishinaabe history, perhaps language, the geology of the area. I know that people are very interested in that. The history of different views from the different kiosks. And we have talked a lot about this. What with QR codes being a fairly ubiquitous way to direct people to current information, that we can easily include QR codes on these kiosks for local events. I mean, pretty much everything is on Visit Cook County site. Restaurants that are open, grocery stores, you name it, it's all there. And current events. So, and we had some concerns about posters being taped or stapled to something that's pretty durable, that they wouldn't stick and be blown away, and it would just contribute to. So we can still have that dialogue. I agree with Todd that that is a historical way that you know, gets people through doors and into parks and whatever. And he suggested a way that we could maybe think about doing it. We can have that conversation when we continue meeting about this. But so far, that is, we have people lined up to be specialists, if you will, in all of these areas, who are willing to collaborate for the 3 locations. Those 3 locations are right at the community connection, and we would speak specifically not about that piece of work. That can be done interpretively within the connection. We want to save the real estate for the other things. And so we'd talk about what you're looking at, you know, and what the history of that looked like way back ago. And point out significant landmarks. And a bit more about the geology and the history, of course. Then, you know, the second location is at the Compass Rose, right at Wisconsin and 61. And obviously, there's the harbor, and that's probably going to be the focus of that. And possibly, like, where was the beach ever? Where was the original bay? You know, and maybe some of the history of where all that gravel went and whatever. It's an interesting story, I think. And then the third is just south of the library at the Planters, yeah, right across the street from Visit Cook County. And for obvious reasons, there's the Gunflint Trail, the history of that. Maybe we talk more about the hillsides and inland stuff, and what the industries were that led to the growth of the town. Those sorts of things. I don't know what this means, Linda, where it says a brief land acknowledgement is being considered.
We've spoken about this, and the council has spoken about this a little bit, and
Yes.
have had some conversations in regards to the racial equity group that's been working in the county, establishing a template, so to speak, for a native land acknowledgement for our area. That can then be modified based on the agency that chooses to use it. So that I really like that idea. I think that's a really great thing to have, just kind of as a runner on the bottom of all 3 of the kiosks, being like, you know, an acknowledgement to the fact that this is all native land. You know, that kind of a thing. I
Yeah.
think that making a statement like that, like telling a great story and then having that be an acknowledgement that's being made, I think that's a really good idea.
I do too, and thank you for clarifying. I thought that's what it was. And that was actually brought up by Stacy Drugard. She's going to be working with us on incorporating the Ojibwa history and language. And we want to integrate it into the whole story, at least just out of the box. We don't want to make it a separate narrative. You know what I mean? I think that they ought to be all part of the same narrative, although I'm completely open. So that must be obvious to you that we're just at the beginnings of creating the content. And to do so, I guess we've got our players lined up pretty well. We do not have a budget yet or a selection for who's going to design this content. It may need a copywriter, it may need a graphic artist, to really pull it together. And we've not gotten that far. That's the piece that I think is missing at this point. But we based the pricing preliminarily to get the numbers that you see here based on CJ's original plans.
Can you pass that big one around
Oh, sure.
so we can take a look at the big one? Because some of the copies in our pamphlet
Oh,
they got like chopped off,
Oh.
so you couldn't see the entire thing.
Got it. I'm glad I brought that. And just so you know, we have had discussions about alternative wood sourcing for different species than epay, and they are potentially greener and potentially less expensive, however, not very widely available. So we just had to kind of go with the epay as a known entity, but we are looking into
Well,
others.
the known entity for cost is really what I think is something we have to go on that. We need to start with a budget that we understand what an expense would be for this, understanding that there are ways we could make it cheaper, not necessarily more expensive.
And I always look to it as long-lasting and durable. You know, these are big things, and they're in the wind and ice and everything else, and they've been engineered, and I didn't want to vary from that. And same for the Corten steel. People have brought up issues of it staining the concrete below it.
Sweet.
And I don't have a problem with that. I just don't. And there are alternatives to, once it has oxidized to the degree that we want it to, we could clear coat it and it would be arrested at that point and not, leach any other colors. But like I say, I don't have a problem with it. It's natural. It's steel. So,
Yeah.
I have a problem with it on like all the brand new sidewalks and concrete that we just put in. I mean, I think we can pre-patina it. I haven't used it much, but when I have, like, you can set it out
right,
and
prior to assembly.
so it's not, I mean, I would imagine that if we were to put those out there, even if people didn't understand the fact that, no, this steel is supposed to do this and it's supposed to do that, right?
That's a
So
good
they're like,
point.
oh, look at these things, they just spent all this money on them, they're rusting away already. It's like, well, that's what it's supposed to do. That's actually what preserves it, to make it last forever. But if it then is staining, that's like the first thing that I thought of, was just like, well, if this is all over, all over the new concrete, all over whatever, it seems like that kind of, well, whatever, people probably complain anyway, but just it seems like a bad kind of situation.
Well, there is,
It's avoidable.
It's a good point.
there are
Yeah.
Corten steel planter portions, throughout the whole corridor design. So that's one of the main materials that CJ was working with.
Yeah,
along
no,
the
I don't have any
project.
problem with the material.
Well, I see what you're saying, Anton. I mean, like, it's kind of just keep it tight, keep it tidy, instead of having, like, for me, I think that'd be kind of an expression. Like, it would be an expression of materials we're using, but I totally get what you're saying. People see it stained in the concrete, they're gonna be like, oh, what a waste.
But what I hear Anton saying is there's a way to pre-patina and get it sealed
You can buy
before.
it that way, too.
Yeah, so
Right?
Or
we
you
will
just leave
probably
it outside.
find some options.
Before
but
you install it, just set the thing
Right.
somewhere on a gravel driveway.
You can leave them out in the snow for a
It
while.
doesn't take that long.
Yeah, and then it's protected, it's not gonna stain anything.
Once it gets, yeah. once
Yeah,
it-
so we had looked at alternative materials, possibly skate light materials, but structurally, they're just not gonna do it.
Do the Corten, yeah.
Yep. So, do you have anything more to say about that? So
You're doing a great job.
we've spent a great deal of time talking about this, and every meeting that we have, every month, we've talked about the kiosks, and we felt a need to come to you, let you know where we're at, and
Secure funding.
and make sure there's secure funding such that we're not spinning our wheels. It's going to take us a lot of time to do this.
I'm gonna ask the obvious, but you're just gonna tell me if I'm right or wrong. Is the target market, the main market for this, are visitors to our community, or do you consider it bigger than that?
For these three locations, I would answer that it's going to be shared. But yes, I think the target might be the visitor, because they don't necessarily know what they're looking at, and these are informational kiosks. On the other hand, we've talked amongst ourselves that if these are successful, that we could see other locations for other kiosks within the city that would do the same thing, only in just different locations.
And I think, you know, at the early stages, the content on the kiosks will be of interest to everybody. The photography, looking at the harbor. I mean, it's someplace where I would want to bring my grandkids
Mhm.
or, you know, look at myself numbers of times. I think it'll be interesting. We're working with the Historical Society, getting old photos and that sort of thing. So it's an educational piece that I think that the community could enjoy as well.
I think
So
that-
maybe that's even a better way to say it, like if its purpose is to be education, one of
Yeah.
its
Yes.
purposes
Yes.
to be educational, yes, that could be anybody.
Yes, that's the way I see it.
Maybe we need to add authorizing interpretive educational kiosks.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, any kind of increased communication, you know, as far as this is, I view this as passive communication for
Yeah.
for Grand Marais itself. It's kind of helping to tell the story, set the stage for it. So I view it as a really great idea, both for visitors and for people who live here, and also, you know, what Tom was saying, or no, Todd Miller was saying was also that, you know, there is a possibility of having these things be used for advertising events and things like that. I mean, whether or not that's,
And we went through that, we seriously did, and we just don't want you know, what was here in the corner and the Joins Ben Franklin sign, you know, go up and staple stuff and then it gets ripped down and we want it to be evergreen, and we want to have minimal maintenance. We don't want to have somebody from the city go march to the kiosk every Monday and remove posters and put up posters, and that's why we went to the evergreen element of panels with, whether it's a QR code or visitcookcounty.com.
I see what you're saying. So
Yeah,
then,
you go
there
to
are
that to find-
resources.
Look here for the events.
Gotcha.
Look here to go to this page for,
Pretty much
Finding
everyone's
detail.
got one of these in their pocket. It's pretty simple to do.
Would there be any use to considering some kind of most times they use tablets, but maybe there's something better, where let's say you do have your own poster for whatever it may be, and that gets back to my who's the audience, because not everything is an event that goes to VCC. But if our audience is potentially bigger than just visitors, it might be community members, and it may be some event or meeting or something as well, not just a social event. I don't know how else to divvy that up, but is there some way to make that electronic, and it just, maybe it runs through? If someone were to stand there and then, and you're right, who wants to go rip off posters or whatever, but then someone sits at a desk and can say, pull this one, keep this one, pull that, you know, whatever. It's just another way, depending on who your intended audience is and what things do you would expect someone might be there for.
Well, number one, these aren't electrified. They were never meant to be.
Okay.
I suppose
So
there
there's
could be
no
a
electricity.
solar panel on the roof of it or something to do, but
Okay.
that has never been discussed as far as I remember. I think we need to keep it simple, non-mechanical, electronic, and durable.
If there is there any lighting
There's lighting around them. There's no lighting in them,
in them?
No.
Okay, got it.
no.
Yeah, I like that.
And you said no then I'm going, oh, like, do they not light off, or?
No.
I mean, at night, it is what it is. By the
Yeah.
time it's nighttime, you're
Yeah.
not gonna go there and read.
Right.
Right,
The only
okay.
place in the project that electricity has been implemented is in the identified areas of art installation in the corridor.
And I think maybe in some planters somewhere
Mhm.
Yeah,
as
there's
well.
plugins in some of those, yeah.
Yeah.
But these in
These are
particular
not.
aren't.
And the foundations have been poured. It's a done deal.
Yeah.
They're all in locations where there's streetlights.
Yeah.
So you'd probably be able to read them at night even without them being illuminated on their own. But they don't have any power to do auxiliary electronics.
Yeah. Okay.
Did I understand, did you say that there was 4 places on each one of these?
4 sides, too. Did you get passed around?
Four
I-
So
Yeah,
it's like
I have
this.
that pulled up on my phone.
Okay.
Two outside, two inside.
2 outside,
Yeah.
2 in, you can walk in it.
Well, I understand that, I just, when you look at the engineered drawings that are shown,
Yeah, they're not on there.
they're not on there, it's just the 2 outsides. It doesn't show any panels on the
That's
inside.
correct.
Yep. but there
That's
would be-
correct.
Would be panels on the
But there would be
inside.
panels on
There
the
would be
insides too.
panels, yeah.
Okay, that's all, I was
Yeah.
just clarifying.
And the trapezoidal side, I see it on the exterior as being a good location for a map. We can fit a map into that trapezoid and just make 4 of them the same, you know. I'm sorry, 3 of them the same. And, like I say, we've got a lot of work to do on laying these things out. And I'm sure that you'll be seeing us again.
Well, and the comment that I have about the design, I really like the design. I think it's really cool.
Mhm.
I think it matches a lot of the other work that we've done in the corridor. I appreciate that the materials are going to be very long-lasting and very rugged, and at least right now, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness this has gone into the to the concept that you've put together for the information that's going to be on them, and incorporating technology to them, but still keeping them simple, so that I like it. I think it's really cool.
Great. So about the costs, we've had the initial bid from MnDOT package. That was a lot of money. CJ.
For the record, I think that the what came in from MnDOT was in the ballpark of $150,000
Right.
for 3
It was
kiosks.
27 each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's
27
like
each?
70
Yeah, so,
It
but then
was-
with all the installation and stuff, didn't it make it go up a little bit? Okay, so it was like 80 grand.
Yep. And that was without content panels.
Yeah, okay.
And then CJ, a company that CJ works with in the Twin Cities, shared with us an alternate bid. And this is going on close to 2 years old, but it was what we're showing you here. And then I've also been in contact with someone much more local who has pretty well indicated that we can do them for perhaps less than that with the content panels.
I think the thing to hang on is that original bid that was pulled didn't have any content. It was just the structure. So that price, the amount that we pulled was just the structure. We would have probably invested another 5,000 to 10,000 to get content on it.
And installation?
Installation is included.
Oh, I meant from the
Oh,
original
No.
quote, you would
No.
have still
Was-
had to add installation?
No,
Oh,
they were gonna be built and installed.
it was just
by a
the
sub.
content was
Right.
missing.
We would
Okay.
have never, we would have had to go in and then add all the content.
Yeah, okay.
And if you would like to proceed in getting 3 kiosks built, there may be no time like the present because costs are going up and up. And availability of materials is also a struggle.
I have another question then. So would it be, you would you already would be taking these plans and just asking someone to bid to do this that you have here as the design and the materials as is?
This is what was bid on.
I didn't know if you were attempting to like contract from any local artists or anyone that way. I
We-
can think of a couple already who do, or one that does this.
Yes.
Some interesting materials that might be very durable and novel.
We're very interested in that too, and we think we've found one that would be a good contractor for it.
So that won't be, so that part of the process is done.
No, it's not done.
Okay.
No.
No, it
but-
has to go through the normal city's RFP
Yeah.
plan.
And, you know, we aren't here to, you know, whatever, submit a bid. The city would have to ask for a bid. But we've lined up someone that I think would be a very good fit for this project. And those, the numbers that you're ever going to get are only going to be good for 30 days because prices are changing so fast.
So I guess where we need to be right now, if the council has any more questions for these guys, then now would be a great time to ask it. Otherwise, kind of a nod of like, is this what direction we want to go? Do we still have reservations about this? Do we not have reservations about this? So that we can move on to the next step with this.
And I would just add that if the, from the CEC, and this is me speaking for the CEC, if it doesn't get approved for funding from the city, I would say that it'll rest.
Yeah.
We have enough going on
Yeah.
with the CEC in creating a policy for art placement on the pedestals, that this would be too much of a heavy lift to do a fundraising effort to get this off the ground anytime soon.
And, you know,
In other words, I'm not fundraising.
Well, we've got enough on our plates. So, and I don't think that the CEC minds partnering with the park board or the city council, whomever it is that you would like to, you know, have oversee this.
Mhm.
We're happy to work with either entity.
So really, you're just wondering, like, if, because we're still gonna get bids, if you're saying this number is 2 years old, that doesn't really, I mean,
This one is, but it was verified just within days that we can do this for less than with the content.
but, so it's not, it's like, okay, if we're comfortable with this number, we say, fine, then we'll do the normal procedure
Yeah.
in, okay, here's the engineered plans,
Mhm.
show us the proposal and
Yep.
what your cost is, and then we get the chance to come back and say,
It's too
there's
much
6
to-
people that came back, and one of them is up here, 3 of them are down here, and there's these 2 in the middle, and we get to make a choice.
And that's really your business.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure that
No.
that's, we're not saying, yeah, go spend $67,000, and then we don't get to be a part of this
No,
anymore.
the
That's you
RFPs
guys.
would come back to you.
Yep.
We're here to consult on the content of the.
The content and the securement of the
Mm.
funding from the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what does council think about the funding? I mean, like, it's my understanding that the city was going to pay for these anyway, as part of the original plan, the original construction project. And I think that the benefit of them and the longevity of them is going to be a good investment for this final piece of the project. So is everybody else, how does everybody else feel about that? I mean, 67 is still a big number, so,
I still have one more question.
yeah, go for it.
I still don't think I didn't frame a question very well, I don't think, because I'm still confused. I don't think I asked it very well.
Okay, Tracy.
In finishing this and getting the people who will actually make this, and this is coming from the CEC group, which I'm assuming is full of local artists, am I right to assume that then you would be contracting with some of those people to make this happen?
None of it's been decided.
Okay.
And
That's a good-
it's
that
not.
helps me.
But, you know,
We have
as-
artists on the CEC, but this is more a marketing niche. with that, you know, if you think of getting a picture, an old picture of the harbor, and putting that picture onto an evergreen material into the kiosk. So there's some specialty work that needs to be done within that content providing. So
For
that
example,
would go
When
into
I
the.
look at this design, I see local artists all over it.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you really intended to, like, is the stained glass, like, yeah, we're gonna do the stained glass. Is the wood there? I also see another local artist who does this kind of work, maybe not with wood, but could also put together a very durable piece that would do this part.
That's part of the,
That's part of the.
that's the
entry.
parkboard project
Yeah.
that was designed by CJ Fernandez.
So we're
And
only
Yes.
doing this?
that's,
Right.
no, that
Well,
project.
then I'm really
Yes.
off
Oh,
base.
okay.
There you go. Just these guys, yeah, just
Just
these,
the kiosk.
just the
I
kiosks.
thought we
Tracy,
had
not
to
off
do
base at
all
all.
of it.
No,
No.
you're thinking right because.
that's part of the community connection
Well, I thought
project.
you meant like we'd have one, like there was a sort of over each
I-
of
I'm
these
I'm
kind
sorry
of
if you
thing.
misunderstood.
So
But
this is very
But the
small.
process will be the same when we go and look at this piece. It'll be the city working with the CEC to find, hopefully someone local, but someone who's capable of doing this, talking about value engineering, different material selections, different ideas of how to accomplish what we're asking.
And I'll add that I noted that we don't have a graphic artist yet or whatever we need for that, but we'd like that to be sourced locally.
Well, it's just, let me say that I'm just totally backing off and everything. Just cleared the whole thing up. I thought this was an example of all three.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Just
Glad
part of
I-
the-
It's the best
That'd be
image,
awesome if it
it's
was.
the best image that we have available to us.
And it's placement of one of the kiosks.
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah,
right there,
right,
yeah.
which I thought. So never mind. I'm
Okay.
just gonna say, no, I'm not saying
Put your
anything.
hand over the right half of it.
Move
It's right there.
So does the council feel comfortable with starting a process of RFPs for this, or is it something that we're not quite ready for that? It seems to me like we have a design, we have some biddable drawings for this, and and we have kind of an expectation for what a cost would be. The only way to really know what that cost will be is to go up for proposals and to have them come back and take a look at them. So what does council feel about that? I mean, if we authorize this to go forward with an RFP, then I'm assuming Mike will work with the CAC and we'll get it written up, get it submitted to local artists and other contractors that have been able to do this kind of work in the past. Research as much as we can, spread it far and wide, see what we get back. Does that sound like a plan? I don't think we need a motion to do that. I think we just say go for it. Would
If
you-
you've
would you-
got 4 nodding heads, that works for me.
Yeah, see, I think
Yeah.
that's worked in the past. So I would love to see it. I'm excited to see what comes back for the RFPs on these. And thank you so much to the CEC. I hope you can keep working on that content, bring content back to us.
Well, we will once we know that they're going to get built.
Well, that's great. Well, we'll move forward. See
Okay.
what we can do with that.
And not to get too tied up in the jargon around it, but I think just to make sure everybody's got a clear understanding of how the process is gonna move forward. This amount of money, we don't have to accept sealed bids. We don't have to have a specification that everyone meets exactly. We've got some flexibility, I think, to get slightly different ideas from people. So the CEC's got a design that they wanna see accomplished, they've got materials selected. If somebody had another idea, I think we could still talk to them and listen to them. So we'll be doing some sort of broad advertising locally for someone to submit a proposal to build these things and have an ability to talk to them all directly. We really only need to have multiple written quotes for what it's gonna cost in order to satisfy the legal process.
Where do you advertise for bid proposals?
It depends on what we're asking for. So, I mean, we're just gonna look for the place where these people are. And generally, we would try to develop a list of people that we're gonna make sure hear from us too,
Okay.
rather than just put it
Yeah,
in the paper.
like a tab, that's where I was going with
Yeah.
it.
If you'd like to involve us in that, or let us know who that is.
Oh,
that would
for
be great.
sure, we're gonna involve you in that, because you've already been talking and thinking about it. We need your help.
Good, thanks. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Good
It's
to see you all.
fun to see the designs.
Likewise.
All right, so moving right along. Appointments to Public Utilities Commission. So I've been saying on the radio for months and months and months, we need people.
Years.
And years, yes, years. And we got some people, so that's really exciting. 3 applicants for 2 positions, as a matter of fact, on the PUC. So the 3 applicants, we have Charles Hathaway, Bill Hansen, and Ben Peters, from all who which live within the PUC district. And yeah, so this is where we have a conversation about who we appoint.
There's 3 of them, I guess.
So,
Yeah, so there's 2 in the packet, and then there's one that's submitted
Yep.
after.
Okay, so let's make sure I'm not lost in La La Land again.
There's 3.
How,
stay for the show.
how many can we have on this board?
There's
2.
you need to select 2
you
to
need
fill the
select
board.
2 of the 3, yeah.
Craig is the other.
Craig's the 3rd,
And then we're done.
and then you're done.
And it
So that
one's
sounds like
full.
we can have more if more people are interested. You just say this is it.
This
That's
is
right.
it, yep.
Okay.
Yep, this is different from the planning commission.
Well, we have a set number for all of our boards.
Yeah,
You've
but
got
not-
some ability to change them if you want. It's been 3 on the PUC for
A long, long time.
probably since it existed. I don't know what it would take to change, but what a great problem to have, that you
Yeah.
have too many applicants.
Well, and I'll get us started. So, so I thought it was amazing. We've got 3 applicants who have a lot of involvement in the community, who have a lot of experience with engineering and energy systems, and and it's like you said, Mike, it's a good problem to have. Personally, I'm interested in getting as many people as possible involved in the city, and having 3 good candidates makes it, since Ben is already on the planning commission, I would be in favor of letting him continue doing the good work he's doing on the planning commission, and then have these other gentlemen step into the PUC. So that's my take on it. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, you want to go first? I think one of the things that I was like, all right, sweet, Ben and Bill, like that'll be great. And I actually, in reading their applications, I want to make sure that I read it correctly here. I liked the idea that Ben had said, just the idea of the interaction between him being on the planning commission and also being on the PUC, especially in regards to like housing. And so like thinking of kind of the, having it would help him have a deeper understanding of utilities, right, being on the planning commission or on the PUC as he's doing his work on the planning commission. So I was excited about that. I agree with Jay though, however, that when we got the application for Charles, that it does seem like if we have an opportunity to have another voice, it makes sense to me to go with Bill and Charles. And I guess that's my take on it. But it's my only holdup about not being, wanting to include Ben into the PUC, because I think it is
It's a good point.
interesting, like, it's I guess I hadn't thought about that idea of it, but it does make sense, and I like that thought of him having a deeper understanding of both, to do both jobs better, so.
Any other thoughts?
Have any, Craig?
No, I feel kind of the same way that Anton is, as far as Ben is concerned. Being on both is kind of helps broaden his interests in the planning commission. Also, I was thinking the experience that Bill has too is kind of nice to see. He's been involved in a lot of things outside of the city also, but I think he would bring a good mind to the Public Utility Commission. We have 3 good applicants, so I guess it just is kind of like choose 2 to fill 2 seats.
and one of the things about Charles too is that he worked his career doing civil engineering with Bar Engineering. So like, he's incredibly knowledgeable about engineering and technology. He's got a good mind. So I wouldn't be worried about any of them being on the PUC. Tracy, any thoughts?
No, of all things to have to make a choice when you've been wanting people to rise to the occasion.
And people
I
do.
guess that's why I asked, can we have more? It also takes a while to build up, a little bit of knowledge about what you're doing when
That's true.
you're on a board, and anything can happen. So I think, wouldn't it be nice to have this extra bit just in case something happens and someone drops or whatever,
That's right.
Like to get right down to like, if one leaves, then oh my God, now we only got two. So that's part of what's in my head, was watching what happened already.
Seeing if we could have alternates for the PUC or something like that.
Well, kind of. I mean, but look, there's only three, and then you lose one, you're almost non-functioning. So
Right.
that's kind of what's going on in my head. And then I didn't think about what Anton just said until now, and get that too. Because frankly, a lot of what these subgroups do is just getting more complex, and it does take a while, and you appreciate expertise they bring to the table as well as what they learn while they're going through it. So that makes sense too. So no, I'm obviously three good candidates. How do you guys want to cut this is fine.
Anybody feel strongly?
Can we just,
Well, I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable making a motion here. So
Okay.
I will make a motion to appoint Charles and Bill to the PUC, and extend a thank you to Ben for putting his willingness forward. So that's my motion. Is there a second for that?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Okay.
I didn't want to say anything while you were deciding, because I didn't want to sway you either way, but Ben's interest in utilities, I think we can do some work with the planning commission to make sure that they are up to speed, knowledgeable, and informed about that. We've already talked about on their agenda doing some cost analysis of installing more sewer lines and as a housing study type project. So we have an intention to do that. And it would have been, I think, a great crossover, like you said.
Yeah.
But we'll make sure that there's some crossover for him anyway to do his work on the planning commission.
okay.
Very cool. Okay, so moving on to council staff reports. Craig, any report?
Yeah, for the park board meeting we had last week, the Historical Society did a presentation on the Niji stabilization project, which is the old fishing tug built in 1936. They're going to start renovating that. We're supporting that at the park. And then there was a presentation by CJ Fernandez on the Community Connection project. And I guess to bring you up to speed on that, that's roughly at a 60% working plan concept right now. And I guess we're at the point where we're working with MnDOT on their involvement in this project, because some of it's in MnDOT right away. So we're moving ahead with that project as it sits right now. And you saw part of the picture tonight on that presentation by the CEC.
Tracy, if you've got some ideas about that piece of the project, I'd love to talk to you about it sometime. That one will be something that we'll be doing sealed bids on. So
Oh.
there'll be less flexibility to have that type of back and forth about material selection.
Yeah.
So we need to do it before we do the bids.
Mhm.
Oh.
So just give me a call or drop by sometime and share your thoughts with me if you wouldn't mind. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, okay.
And as far as the parks report goes, what was the first day of, February 1st was the first day of opening up the reservation center. And they did 400 reservations that day online,
Yikes.
starting at 8 a.m. So it was a pretty brisk reservation. And they're seeing more and more people requesting full hookups and bigger rigs,
Mhm.
because everybody bought those last year, so now they want to use them
Yep.
next year. So
Exactly.
it's shaping up to be looking like a fairly busy summer for the park, I think, as far as weather goes. And then also bringing back WTIP Radio Waves Music Festival in the park in September. So
Just slams that weekend.
it's
doesn't it?
planned for that weekend,
Yeah.
yeah, September 9th to the 11th. So those are the issues relating to the park anyway.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yep.
Anton?
We postponed our EDA meeting, it was last night, because we didn't have a quorum, so we're pushed that till next Tuesday, the 15th, and we'll be talking about what we pushed from here back to them about the zoning changes, and have a deeper discussion within that organization about what we want to see, so that we can get it back here. I think that's it. I guess I'd say, there are a couple public comments about the snow removal. I just have to say, like, I'm pretty impressed with, for it being the first year of everything kind of being functional with sidewalks and things on the project. I've been pretty impressed. I think there are spots, I've seen communications, and I just said, just reach out to City Hall, and I'm sure it's, it's the timing, right, of MnDOT, county, city, trucks, and how sidewalks get, they might be great, but then another state goes by, and it's like, they might not know that or miss it, and it's just trial, we'll get it figured out, but you can grumble, but it makes more sense just to make a call, and they'll likely respond. So, I think it's been pretty impressive, the amount of work. Have they had any conversations? I mean, it's been a lot of snow this year too. I mean, have they,
A lot of snow, no doubt.
how are they, like staffing, like burnout? They're fine? They're doing it?
They're doing great work, and I think this is a real test for them. Not just because it's all new, but because there's a lot of snow.
Yeah.
And most of what they're doing now is moving snow around. In a typical winter, there's days where they're doing other things too, but that's not really been the case for a while here.
Yeah.
So I think they're holding okay, and.
And the equipment hasn't broken.
It sure has, many times. But that's just a typical winter as well. Yeah, the coordination has been mostly happening at a staff level too, between the different agencies, and I think it's been going great as well.
Sure.
We had some policy level staff meetings with MnDOT earlier in the year to talk about, okay, this is the first time we're gonna do this, and who's gonna do what, where, and really didn't feel completely resolved at that meeting, but the staff at all the organizations have just been doing great work.
Yeah. Can we talk about what was discussed at the open, or not, at the open
If you bring it up.
forum?
I'd sure like to.
So, I mean, I think that when I lived in, like, right in town where there was alleys and things like that, I mean, that was just kind of everybody on that block, mostly the guy with the four-wheeler, or whoever, to move that snow. And is there a different, it seems to me that there's a different maybe expectation in the downtown, at least from that group. And I don't know how you, I don't know, how do you differentiate, like, well, now they're taking care of the alleys in the downtown core, what about all the alleys in the residential?
If you
Right.
decide to ask us to start plowing alleys downtown, that would be my expectation, is
Yeah.
that's gonna be next.
That's what I would think too.
You could make the argument that there is more public use of the downtown alleys versus the residential alleys, but also, there's a lot more business use there. Those alleys have long been established as business access for those
Yeah, I
for those
don't really-
businesses.
Well, first of all, I think I'd like to make sure I know what we're talking about. If I close my eyes, I see 3 primary alleys. Behind us here, I think this is an alley between the Co-op and East Bay, is that? Okay, and then the alley that
Behind the tavern.
tavern. Are there any other downtown commercially, related alleys I'm not considering?
The alley, this one as it crosses Wisconsin, there's some alley.
Oh,
Over
right,
there.
down, okay, between Severson's and
Yeah.
Bank. Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, so there's 4 alleys. And we know for sure that these 2 have a lot of commercial use, and not just from the people shopping there, but potentially loading and unloading large trucks and things, including for our city.
Mm-hmm.
So my first thought would be that, yeah, these are different than a residential alley with different considerations, and certainly used more frequently.
So the question I have is, based on what Tracy's saying, is we are clearing our parking lot, the car chargers are by the restrooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're assuming also cleaning the alley,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are we going all the way between Spence and the old White Pine?
We sure could be, yeah.
I mean, like.
Are we?
We're not right now.
Like,
I'm
could
not.
be like we might be, or
I
like.
don't,
We're not
I don't
right
know
now.
for sure.
Oh, okay.
I know for sure we do this, but we're using this for
Yeah.
our purposes.
Right, and that.
So we stop, the city does this, but we stop halfway down?
I don't know if they go through there and do that or not.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to clarify that.
And then I guess because we own that parking lot, the question would be then as well, are we going down? I mean, because then I guess I can see if well, we're not just dealing with city-owned property, we are extending that out, that helps these businesses. We don't have any stake in it over there, but.
Other than it being a city alley.
I mean, you could make a
Well,
case, I think, that commercial properties are different in character than residential
Sure.
properties.
Yeah.
It's a perfectly reasonable case to make. It's not gonna stop the residential alley people from coming and asking for additional services. So
Well,
I think
I would-
if you're comfortable with the choice you've made, then just expect that and we'll deal with it.
Sure. And I would also have to assume that if the sheriff or somebody showed up about snow being pushed into the street, that wasn't because Jay or you said, I'm assuming whoever was plowing, that's just what, if I was pushing all my snow out onto the highway, I'm pretty sure the guy plowing the Gunflint Trail would call the cops on me too, because you can't do that.
You can't do that.
So, and that seems pretty obvious.
It's a state statute.
It's this, yeah, so that,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
And anybody who thinks that the first point of contact ever from the city is law enforcement does not understand how we do business.
No,
That is just not how we do business.
yeah,
It is definitely not the first point of contact,
yeah,
ever.
yeah, okay, that's all, I was clarifying that point, 'cause
Yeah.
I
Is
don't-
this an alley too?
The one between,
And that's like a perfect.
Does it could count, is this, what is this?
Cook County News Herald.
That's
the
privately
tab.
owned.
No.
That's private.
That's private.
That's perfect, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's a private driveway.
Okay, thank you.
And that's, I mean, like, so there's a perfect situation. If that thing gets cleared, like, where does that go? It's either gonna get pushed into City Alley, right? Or it's gonna get pushed into the street, neither of which is allowed.
We,
No, but
we
we-
have historically been able to coordinate with private snowplow operators that doesn't end up leaving piles in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
Is a very possible outcome that just requires a little cooperation and timing.
Sure.
It's also, you know, whether it's the alley or somebody's parking lot, that's just downtown, there's not a lot of space for people to put snow, and so that's an expectation on our part that we're willing to coordinate with folks. There's also an expectation that folks may have to do some hauling of their own too, when they run out of space. But you look at the neighborhoods in the residential zones, and we would never put up with somebody leaving a pile of snow in the middle of the street in a residential zone either. And it just doesn't happen. And there's a lot of different folks out there plowing snow that are not leaving piles in the middle of the street.
Okay.
Do we have any safety, also to add to that, safety concerns if an alley, like this year, for instance, where you actually might see a true alley covered in snow, of not get, emergency services?
But I don't think Linda was exaggerating in talking about how bad that alley's gotten. That alley's pretty bad. So I mean, it's, something needs to change about the condition of that alley. I would think that it would make the most sense for us to work on coordinating snow removal with the person who's responsible for plowing that alley, and then that would solve the problem of having big piles of snow left in the street. That to me seems like the most efficient use of our people's time, and a good compromise for getting that problem solved. So I mean that could also be really naive of me to think that. So it's I don't know.
I think it's naive though to also think that, like, if you push your snow out, if the city happens to be between storms out cleaning sidewalks and loading trucks, which is, it costs the taxpayer expense to do that, well, since they're doing it, I might as well just take these extra couple
Well, that's what I'm talking
loads.
about. The coordination has to be in
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
Like the problem that's happening right now is that there's no coordination. So the snow is being pushed into a parking spot on Second Street or Second Avenue. Second Avenue? Yeah, Second Avenue.
First Avenue?
First
First
Avenue?
Avenue.
Gosh, my brain. On First Avenue, that is disrupting the flow of traffic in that area, and where does that snow go? Eventually, it's picked up, right? But it's we need to figure out that coordination of how that gets picked up so it doesn't cause the problem.
Right.
But I'm still wondering if we're treating alleys consistently.
And
Yeah, I
that
think
maybe
we
is-
are.
Maybe that's a question that what do we do, from
Oh, I see
the
what you're
edge
saying.
of
If this
ours
one's down here,
going
I
that
see what you're
way,
saying.
when the edge of our lot
Okay.
this way.
And I'd be happy to invite our staff to your next meeting to talk about it.
I think that's a good idea.
Well, that alley behind the Dairy Queen and what she was talking about, I mean, trucks back in there and unload at two businesses. So, I mean, it is if we're not maintaining it, somebody is, privately with the snowplow, or just the trucks are pushing and packing and moving stuff, but it does get used quite a bit by commercial vehicles, and it's probably something we should look at, plowing or, taking care of it at least once in a while. And I know if they coordinate, Lenny and these guys are out plowing snow at 3 in the morning roughly, and usually when they get a lot of snow, if we get 7, 8, 10 inches of snow, they're putting it in the middle of the street and going down that whole area. And if anybody else is plowing snow, I'm sure if they would bring it out to the middle of the street, that's when you can get rid of it. I mean, they got a big front end loader. Not that we're going to be doing that for everybody, but it would help get the snow out of that alley anyway, which is being used by cars, traffic, trucks. commercial vehicles, and it's not like it's every alley in the town, that's mostly the main one.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right
when you
now.
talk about coordinating, that's what we do. I mean, we're not gonna be able to come
Back
at their convenience. when
Yeah, you're
they're
not
ready
gonna
to do
know,
it. But if
right.
they can come at ours, we're happy to accommodate.
Right, like when I plow early in the morning, when I had my store, I'd do the same thing with Lenny. I'd push everything down the street, not from my parking lot. I push my snow over to mine, but I'd plow actually the street just to get it clean by the Best Western and push it down, and then Lenny would take it out, like he'd taken all the snow out of here, you know. But you gotta be there at 3 in the morning doing it, so.
Yeah, and you're private contracting, and these guys are all over the place. That doesn't mean they can coordinate the time. That doesn't sound like it would be very easy to coordinate, depending on who you're contracting with and all the places they need to be.
Well, if they knew, that's when they gotta do it. They gotta be there.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise
Well,
it's
I
not,
think,
you know.
I think it's worth a
You need to be
conversation.
there.
I mean, I think it's worth a conversation and having.
And what if you change out your contract? I don't know. Like, why can't we take care of? I don't know.
Let's have this conversation with some staff, and we'll see what we can gather for information, and see if there's some kind of a solution we can find for this. But I think there's got to be some kind of a solution for this. And
We can
and
have it.
like Anton was saying, this is the first year that we've been doing all of the additional work, and we do have additional equipment, and we've had a crazy snowy winter. So let's use this as an opportunity to find a solution, that'll work in less snowy winters.
As
And
well.
we have to replace some streetlights tonight. Holy cow! I can hear the wind blowing stuff around.
Yes. Oh, yeah, to pick up.
Yeah, the
Well,
wind's
yeah,
blowing
and
crazy.
by Friday night, Saturday, we'll be right back into this again.
Well, that's what they're saying. We're gonna get a bunch of snow, right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow night, Friday, 6 more, yeah.
Set again.
That's exciting.
Yep.
Okay, does that work for you, Anton?
Yeah, sorry, I
Is that
didn't mean to
everything?
go off on a tangent there, but we should at least address what was brought up, I think, so.
Yep.
That was good.
Okay, so then, anything for you, Tracy?
Two things, I think. So I did go to the climate resilience forum today, and it was really pretty good. We had pretty good they were at max, I saw 98 people on that meeting. And I thought, looking through, that our county had pretty good representation. We had quite a few of our county commissioners on, which is great. And Elena Hansel was there, and of course Shane Still was there, and he presented as well in one of the sections, so that was great. And they had it very well divided up, so maybe 45 minutes with one group and whatever. And one of the comments I made back in a breakout session was it would be great if we could have access to some of this later to pick and choose a few different presentations, and maybe like C-CLAP or through Shane, or maybe Elena would have interest in the county, but we could offer some of those sessions up in other meetings or organizations if people had interest, because that's more bite-sized, and they had very good examples that you can connect with. And also some really, it's too much, but they had so many sources of information, places to get help from. It's like, whoa. So if you were focused on a particular topic or something, maybe you just looked at that and then saw the resources, whatever. But yes, it was pretty good. And I don't know if I got this totally right, but it looked like they had like online maps of all the watersheds, which is kind of
Yep,
cool.
that exists, yeah.
Thank you.
It's good stuff.
Then I wasn't totally off on that one.
You nailed it.
I got one right. So there we go. So that was neat, and I do hope I'll mention it to Shane too, that I think it has application. You hate to do something like that and only see it once or twice without they're doing it. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is that I've had contact from a couple people in the community with concerns about how we've managed our land sale at the top of the hill. Maybe that is something we need to discuss a little bit more, process flow. And I wasn't here when that started, but I was asked to make sure it moved along, so I did. And so I wouldn't say I'm the most familiar about the initial conversations or meetings, when it started. but, and maybe not for tonight, maybe next meeting, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that in order to gather more information about that, and to have a better grasp on what we're talking about, I think it'd be wise to put that off
Yeah,
until next
so we
meeting.
we
Yeah.
could put it on for,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure it was acknowledged that
Mhm.
because I haven't contacted, yeah, we should do that. Okay.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'd just say about that, I was expecting that you'd have a purchase agreement in front of you for your next meeting to consider, so if you're thinking about doing something different, it'd probably be worth talking about that tonight.
I guess, yeah, the only thing, I mean, so we talked about that. I saw comments about it, and so I looked back through minutes to find out when, like, it was first discussed. And it was on the agenda in July 14th meeting. It was on the agenda as something that was gonna be discussed. And I, you know, it was actually kind of interesting going back and, you weren't here, Jay. Kelly was running the meeting. It was interesting. I went back and watched it just so I could be like, here's the link, here's where we talked about it. This is how far into the meeting it was on the agenda, so you don't have to watch. It was, you know, we were like, are we gonna do Fisherman's Picnic or not? You know, it was
Mhm.
for Fisherman's Picnic, same meeting. And I think, I mean, to me, you know, I think, depend on Chris, and, you know, everybody at that meeting said, okay, well, I don't think we have any problem with starting the process, and what does that process look like? And that is, you know, figuring out value, figuring out, you know, well, that meeting was really like, are we interested in doing it? And one of the things I brought up at that meeting was like, absolutely, I think at least I was, because when we originally, the city bought the Tom Devoto property to develop the public works facility, that was part of the reason on placement for where we put the public works facility, so that we would still, when we were buying all the land at that time, which we caught flack for taking something off, commercial property off the tax rolls, but where we developed the public works facility, then it still left us that whole highway frontage to be, you know, sold in the future, and potentially back to the point where the land that we put the public works facility on actually wouldn't cost us any money.
If you defray the expense of purchasing the land with
Right.
the sale of the
The
parcels.
commercial frontage.
Yeah.
So, I think, I don't know if you remember much from that meeting, Craig, I mean, it was like 7 months ago, or 8, whatever it was, but, yeah, and from there, then I think we all said, yeah, we didn't make any sort of motions on anything, it was more like a head nod, like, yeah, we are interested in exploring, like, what is the process for how this goes on, and I think that, well, I know that was dealt with between Mike and between, the city attorney, and how that process works to be, because I think we even brought up at that meeting, well, it's like, well, you know, we know that Tim used to be on the city council, and so, but at any point, you know, anybody, I mean, we didn't put anything out there like, well, we're just gonna sell off all, you know, the meeting wasn't like, let's see if we can sell off city land. Somebody came forward to us and said, are you interested in selling this? And that's kind of what started the process. So, I guess the meeting's out there. There was 53 people that watched the meeting total. So, I mean, it's not like I had a lot of viewers, you know, but it was also in the minutes. The conversation from that was in the minutes in the July 28th meeting, that it was discussed about. And I don't know if it's just like people didn't, you know, pay attention to the fact that, you know, that process was moving through or what, but it's not like this happened last week. I mean, it's been 7 or 8 months of the process happening on like how we do it. But that's my understanding on it.
If I understand some of the concerns, it is the, which I thought I had answered because we got an appraisal and we talked all that through. Are we putting up city land and getting the best dollar we could for it?
I mean, I think that's an unknown. I mean, so like the only, I mean, I think I understood that. You know, if somebody said like, well, this is the steps that should happen, and as far as I understood, all of those steps have happened, except for the one where we say, okay, well, now we're just gonna take this value that we got, and we're gonna list this property, and it's gonna go out, right? Which we probably would still just be sitting on that and not have gone through the appraisal process and not done these things if we hadn't had somebody that was interested in purchasing it, right? I mean, if somebody got a hold of us tomorrow and said, hey, you have this property
On the other side of
on
the,
the east side of the Tom Kubota property, which you're not using for the highway project storage anymore, and I'm interested in purchasing this, and this is what I'm interested in doing. I think anybody that does that, we would go through the exact same process, which would be getting an appraisal, understanding what exactly is the size of the land and what's involved in that.
legal description, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know.
And I've asked this not around this property, but for other things, what is, or is there any set process the city has to go through? Or maybe the other way to say this, what is the option? Is the city allowed to say, I have this building, I have this land, and give it to a broker or a realtor to sell? Or does it have to go through a bid process? What are our options?
That you can do pretty much whatever you want in terms of process. So you could list it, you could set a price for it and take offers, you could have sealed bids, you could do,
Okay.
accept an offer that, or negotiate with someone who's made an offer. You really have a lot of flexibility on what you want to do.
Okay, that's good to know.
I think the problem with a lot of this thing here is we're not really in the business where we're selling land every month,
Right.
the city, and we don't really have a lot of land to sell, or probably that we want to sell. That particular piece would be one that we acquired to build the garage on. We ended up with some extra land there, which obviously, we could elect to go through the process of getting it all appraised and listing it, having sealed bids. I think what happens in a situation like this is you start getting some feedback from the public, like I have today and the other day, and probably quite a while ago I did get some feedback from somebody. And one of the feedback questions was, what are we selling that land for? Why does the city have to sell that land? And we really don't have to sell it. But then it started getting my mind thinking, okay, so if we're gonna sell land, how should it be done so that we don't get this negative feedback from people thinking that we're not doing the best thing for the taxpayers? And that's kind of what I'm getting from people. And I don't know what other cities do. I imagine that if that was just a piece of land that we decided we wanted to chop up into 3 pieces and sell them, we'd get it appraised, we'd have an advertisement in the paper, what our opening asking price would be, we'd have sealed bids until a certain date, we'd open them, and if we don't get our expectations met, we don't sell it, or if we do, we sell it. Now, it's a little different process when somebody approaches us and says, hey, I'd like to buy that piece of property. Well, now do we have a different avenue that we take to handle that? Or do we say, okay, now somebody approached us, we now have to get an appraisal done, which we do anyway, and then work with that individual, or we would just say, now that we've been contacted to sell a piece of public land, we need to exercise our right to collect as much money for that as we can, based on taxpayers, that's what they want. And so now would you accept bids, on a piece of land that somebody asked us to sell to them? I mean, is that the risk that the potential asker has to take when buying public land, that you may be bidding on this, now that you've brought it up to the sale point?
I mean, that risk exists right now. You could get somebody to make you another offer on that piece of property today, tomorrow, or 2 weeks from now. There's
Right.
nothing stopping anyone from doing that.
No, and
And
I'm not
we
saying that's what I want to do at this point. I'm just saying
Yeah. We don't.
it'd
we
be
don't
nice to
sell
have
lot
a
of
policy
pieces.
that just goes into play when something like this happens.
But
so
we
that
don't
we're
have
not
a
having-
policy because of what you started with, which is we don't do this very often.
Right.
In fact, we rarely do it.
Exactly.
If you look at cities and what they do, you're gonna find they do everything. Like, all of the possible ways this can happen, cities do those. If you think about locally, what government entity here is in the business of selling property? We've got the EDA. They sell lots all the time.
Right.
They have set a price, they have listed them with realtors, they have accepted offers on lots without having any prices on them, they've negotiated prices. So even here in the city of Grand Marais, all of the things that people have suggested we should do and not do, we've already done up at the business park. So, I mean, this is not any different than a number of the lot sales that have occurred at the business park, except we're getting more money for this lot.
Well, it's the difference, though, that everyone knows that they're there for the purpose of being sold. And the question here
Yeah.
was, we weren't actively
Yeah.
at a
Pursuing.
point where we said, here's 2 or 3 lots, and we're actively now trying to sell them. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I think so.
On this part of it. I know that, me personally, I prefer just went to a realtor and, if we wanted to actively sell something, but whatever, that isn't really the point right now. So I think that's the tricky part about this. If people are uncomfortable about how we went through this, and of course the feeling, obviously, that, because Tim Kennedy was so actively involved within our city and other things for so long, did he know something other people didn't know? Which I don't know if that's really a play
I don't
here.
think that's true.
But I feel that is, the perception.
I think based on the fact that Tim served, how long was he on city council? Like
18 years.
18 years. So, I think the fact that he was involved, right? The idea of, because on July 14th, we could have said like, no, we're not interested, and that would have been that, right? And I think that only because of being involved and understanding. It's not like there was, it was more of a question of like, would the city, right, be interested in selling this? That was his question. We said, yeah, let's figure out what the process is and see what that looks like and see what the price is compared to, and so I don't know if, I hear what you're saying, but I don't feel like it's, I don't know, it would almost be like, if our electric rates go up, I couldn't understand why our electric rates go up, but Craig would understand why his electric rates go up, right? Because Craig is involved in the PUC and understands all those things that go into play of that, only because that's like one of the things that he serves on, right? Like,
Good night.
it's that, like, that base, that knowledge that you get by being on there, like, again, all that information is out there. If you wanted to watch our meetings every Wednesday night, you would also have, that same knowledge from when we had this conversation of should we buy the Tom Tabota property, right? But, it's hard to do, right? That's why
Yeah.
not a lot of people want to be on city council, because it is like, it takes time and who wants to spend their Wednesdays.
Yeah. No one's gonna want to know they have to go to every city and county meeting to be in the know of things. So
Right.
I get what you're saying, but it does make sense from the standpoint that he might have, simply because of the role he played, But as a person in the community, you shouldn't have to do that to know what's there. And it's true, I don't believe at this point we were actively trying to market any of that property. It had not been asked. And then I also wonder, I know we've made other decisions in the past and had to say, is price, and from the other direction too, you know, the cost, if what we're asking is the cost, the lowest possible, that has not always been all of our criteria to make a decision. Either the best possible price or the lowest cost, whatever, we always bring in other factors into it. So I don't know what other factors we might consider at this point, but I don't think we have to say, oh, we always sell to the highest. I don't know that, that's a question.
Yeah, you don't have to. I think that's certainly an important criteria.
Yeah,
But for me, this is more about an opportunity that was presented to you and taking advantage of it just based on the timing of it. There wasn't another number to consider, so.
Right. It's a bit of a circular
And how could you
argument.
ever really know
Yeah.
this is the best I mean, it's an unanswerable question.
Yeah, it's a bit of a circular argument when you
Yeah.
look at the fact that like, what's the best price we could get for that property? Well, it's the price that we've negotiated. You know, that is,
Yeah.
presently, that is the greatest price that we can get for that. Now, of course, we don't need to sell that land right away, but also that's an opportunity that's come up for a business to be developed on the corridor, which is something that we've prioritized, and also at a price that is fair and that helps us achieve the other goal, one of the other goals that we have with that property, which is to help defray the cost of building a public works facility.
And I think maybe
So-
another one is to get it back on the tax rolls and to get it to be a productive part of the community and to get it to be a business or a residence or something that's serving the community, to have jobs. I mean, all those things are potential criteria that you may or may not have used when you thought about, do I want to sell this?
Yeah.
and just to play devil's advocate even more, someone else could come in, offer more money and meet all that criteria,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Mhm.
We haven't signed anything,
Yep.
so.
Well, we had a closed meeting on this, so I don't know what I can talk about.
Yeah,
You really
right.
can't talk about the things in the closed meeting unless you as a council decide together that you want to talk
Okay.
about those things.
I'm not talking about price or anything like that, but can we talk about utilities?
About,
I think you can, yeah.
yeah, but like developing costs for utilities
Right.
or installation.
That's
costs for
fine,
utilities.
I guess, at this point, at that last meeting, I'm not quite sure how we left that. Because it is a concern to me anyway.
Yeah.
As far as who's gonna pay for that?
All the things that you left it at
And what it might-
are probably things you can't talk about unless you as a council decide together that
Okay.
you want to.
okay.
But
What is that, is there any, I mean, I think I'm personally fine, as one counselor, 100% fine talking about that, you know? I mean, I'd much rather have this conversation here, and I don't, maybe it isn't I mean, unless Chris says we can't, or Mike says we can't, not even the monetary side of it, but like more what the
Process?
understand, like what you were saying about
the things that you talked about in that closed meeting were not things that you're obligated to close the meeting for. They're things that you have the option to close the meeting for. So you also have the option to decide that they are not private if you want to as a council.
The reason we close the meeting is so that we have that forum to have a negotiation without feeling like we compromise the process of
Right.
negotiating with another party.
Right.
So now, like, if we feel like some of the information we discussed, i.e. potential costs associated with the development of that property, if that's appropriate for public discourse and won't compromise our discussion of, or our negotiation, then we can agree as a council to talk about that in an open session.
I would say this, It's for sure relevant and will become public when you have a purchase agreement.
Yeah.
And so if it makes sense and you want to talk about those things, it will be relevant and on your agenda in 2 weeks. I'd say the only reason, if you want to bring it up and talk about it tonight, would be because you're thinking about going a different direction because of it. And I just say that because if you're thinking about going a different direction, it'd be best to decide that sooner rather than later.
I'm not really considering going in a different direction.
No, I think yeah.
I feel like the concerns will be addressed when the information becomes public, to a certain extent.
I mean, it's just what's so, I mean, I understand the closed meeting thing and trying to negotiate like a price and figure out what that is. But I also think like it inevitably creates this like air of like,
Yeah.
Smoky rooms.
whoa,
and-
whoa. It's like, you know, I mean, I understand why we have to close meetings when we're doing union negotiations, right? Or like settling that kind of stuff, or pay increases and those types of things. 'cause
Personnel decisions.
Personnel decisions, that kind of stuff. But it's just like, wait, no, this, I mean, yeah, I don't see, I mean, it's frustrating because it's, you know, again, it's all gonna be there anyway. But
Well, this
until
is-
that happens, then it just creates this like, you know, like, ooh, there's some shady shiftiness happening. It's like, no, it just, why would you ever want to be in, whether you're a city or a private entity, having that conversation? But because we are,
Public
right,
meeting.
we're public officials, like, it's just like, it creates that.
And you just have to pick the side of it that you're willing to take flack on. And because for sure, if you have a full conversation about all the information you have in your negotiating position, you're gonna take flack for doing that.
Sure.
That's silly. And then, you know, if someone really was concerned about you maximizing value, you did everything you possibly could to not.
Yeah.
So you have some questions about one part of the sale, which isn't so much like the pricing or anything about this, but just about.
Well, it has nothing to do with the price of the
pricing.
land.
It's more around part of the process. Is that something we can talk through right now?
If you all wanna do it, you sure can, yeah.
It- It's gonna be, it would be tricky to talk about it without, I don't know. I mean, I think we can talk about it. I'm not 100% sure what you wanna talk about, Craig, but I have
Are
a
you talking
feeling
about
I kinda know.
infrastructure?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the infrastructure
That's not there.
expense.
that
Right.
needs to be put there.
Right. So I think that could be discussed without any sort of, the conversation that from the closed portion of that so right now there's water and there's sewer to the public works facility,
Yep.
right? But there is not to the two lots, the Farmer Hotel side of the road, east side of the road, and the west side of the road.
Correct.
There is not. So part of the conversation that we had was, would we be providing water and sewer stubs, not like to the build site, but stubs and access to that? And would the city be doing that because it's in our road, right? And as we had that discussion on if we would do that, because it wouldn't just be benefiting the sale of this lot, it would also be benefiting the potential future sale of the east lot where the hotel used to sit, right? So that was part of the conversation. And then based on what we had for amounts on that is how we came to terms with what our price was, sale price of this lot that Tim is looking at. So we took those things into account. There was many things discussed with, you know, capping amounts of what the infrastructure would cost. There was all kinds of different round and round that we discussed. But I think that at the end of that, we came to like, well, let's set this price in such a way that we feel comfortable, because whatever we have to do for the infrastructure, we likely would end up doing that anyways sometime in the future to sell these lots. So if we have somebody interested now, whatever that cost ends up being, that one project right now is actually gonna benefit the one that we're selling right now and one that we would potentially sell in the future. Which, if anybody is interested in that hotel lot,
It's right there.
there's the process, and, you know, so, is that what you were getting at?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
that is,
Thank you for that little reminder primer, because now I remember all of that, or I get it, what you were saying.
Because
Because
they're-
at one
they're-
point in time, we talked about, well, if this is an excessively amount of money,
Yeah,
we
Right.
may just not do this.
right.
right,
But then I think we left that and said, no, we're just gonna do it.
that's because there was an offer that he had made. We had our appraised value, and it was a appraised value range,
Mhm.
right? And so our price was based on this kind of understanding. And also, I brought up that, well, if for some reason the engineering numbers for doing that water sewer subs on what's already there ends up being higher, well, okay, we still have this other lot, right, that we can potentially reflect that, right? So if they said it was gonna be $5,000 and ended up costing $10,000, well, we can address that when we go to sell
Sell the other
this
lot.
other lot, right? I don't know if you remember that.
And then we have two,
Yeah, no, I
two
mean-
lots
Yeah.
that are served, and we have the costs covered, and we've accomplished.
And we're doing it
our
in one shot versus doing it once to serve the lot that we're looking at selling now, and then having to do it all over again when we,
Right.
if somebody was interested in the other vacant lot there. We just do it at one time. We'd be control of the project because it's in city property.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you've covered most of the details of the conversation at this point, but
Well, those are fine ones.
there's more that you'll be able to talk about this and make final decisions about this, because you haven't yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When there's a purchase agreement on your agenda, those types of terms are the things that would be included in the purchase agreement.
Okay.
And if you have issues with some of them, there's still an opportunity for you to discuss those terms in the purchase agreement when it's in front of you.
Yeah, we don't have to do.
And I
this
just
now.
used the results of your discussion last meeting as a guide to help put the purchase agreement draft together. But it's not, this is what it has to be, you still get to decide.
Yeah. But I mean, that, to me, I wanted, I don't know, I think all of us do, I mean, whatever, without, you know, without losing the potential, not advantage, but like our position as the city, right? To try and explain like how we came up with our
Right.
rationale, I think is important for
Yep.
people that are questioning how we came up with our rationale.
Mm-hmm.
Without potentially losing that advantage and being criticized for like, wow, you just, you know, showed your hand, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for that.
Is that-
We'll definitely pick that up more.
Help what you had to,
Yeah, because
your concerns?
Well, I think
Maybe.
so. I mean, when, it helps me from the questions that I was asked.
Yeah.
And I feel like we went through them. And then, you know, Craig had said I have this other thing, and I think then we talked about it.
Yeah. I think we'll probably have more discussion when we
Oh, yeah.
sit down and actually look at everything here, because we're gonna need to probably address some of that stuff.
yeah, so we'll
at that
make sure
time.
that we definitely read through the purchase agreement before the
Yeah.
meeting next time.
And I mean, can I also say, like, that's not, I mean, Chris, I mean, I think that we look to you, you know, to help
Right.
us with that, right? Because we're all not lawyers. And try to understand the process as we move through all these different things that we have to do. But I think for us, we want, obviously, that was reiterated numerous times by everybody on that July 14th meeting about like, well, what's the process? This is step one of the process, and then we want this to move forward in the way that's legal and like fair and open as one can be in a real estate transaction like this, right? But is there a way, if we're already talking about the potential of another piece of property, like, is there a way where it is, I don't know, I mean, is it really just like listing it and that's the easiest way versus waiting for somebody to approach you and feeling like there's this right to, I'm not afraid of like criticism, because that's just goes with the job, I guess, but like, I also want to be able to answer questions, right, and feel comfortable answering questions that I'm not like jeopardizing, right, like the decisions we've made.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but it's public land, and you're not gonna, whether it's for sale or not for sale, or somebody comes and asks you, is it for sale? And then all of a sudden you decide, yeah, it is for sale. The bottom line is, it's public land. So I think we should have a process that sells that in a fair way for everybody that's concerned, including the public and also the person who inquires about it. Now, if I want to buy that other piece of land up there and I come in and tell Mike, hey, I want to buy that other piece of land. Okay, so we get it appraised. Now, I think the right way to do it would be, because I opened up the can of worms by asking about it, now I've started the process where the city now puts it on the market. I might be the only one to bid on it.
I see what you're saying.
There might be 9 people to bid on it, but that's a chance I take by asking for public land to be sold. Maybe I'm wrong on that, I don't know, but
Well,
then I'm kind of showing the people of the community, hey, we're doing the best we can at selling this the fair, proper way. We're giving everybody a chance. May not be anybody who wants to buy it besides Tim or me or you or whoever. But that way, you're not running into questions from people. Hey, I don't think this is right. Hey, I don't think this is fair. Hey, I don't think you're getting enough money for it. Look at the market.
I think you're gonna run
You know what I'm
into
saying?
Don't you-
concerns regardless of how you do it. But there's nothing wrong with the approach that you suggested.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm just putting a
Yeah.
model out there that maybe eliminates people from, like you said, this has been talked about since July and nobody seemed to say anything about it. You know, now they are. But if we did it a little differently.
We're still gonna get criticized, because that's just the go, I mean, right,
Well.
but.
Yeah, I know. I'm
but-
just thinking
No, I
about
agree
certain
with
public
you.
auctions, because I remember
Yeah, I agree
when,
with you 100%.
well, here's another example, when the state sold a bunch of shoreline on Devil's Track Lake, back when my grandmother had a piece of state leased land, but she had a cabin on it, all the state leased land went to auction. And you could buy that piece of land out from underneath somebody if you were the high bidder, but then you had to pay them for the improvements. You see, now that was kind of a rotten way of doing it, because somebody maybe didn't want to sell their land, but they got outbid, well, then they had to sell their cabin too, because they were forced to. I don't think that was right, but, you know, they were doing that. Well, that's fair to the public, and everybody has a whack at it, but this is a little different, it's raw land. I don't know, I'm just trying to,
Yeah, no, I think it's a super important conversation, I mean, that's, yeah.
you know, and maybe that's the chance that I would take in approaching the city to buy that other piece of land. Not that I'm doing this, I'm just, for instance, that now I open it up to,
Sure.
hey, everybody else,
Yeah,
you know?
And I think it's just a matter of perspective, and I don't mean that to downplay the issue, because it's an important issue. But he did open it up,
Yeah,
and people
True.
do have an opportunity. They did and still remain
Yeah.
with an opportunity
yep,
to join the conversation as a person who's interested in the property.
right,
And no one has.
you're right. So, I mean, that's, when you brought up July 14th, it's like, yeah, I forgot we've been dealing with this for,
I thought it was like October, and then I was like, wait, no, and I had to keep going back through all of the minutes, and I finally
Right.
found the minutes on July 28th, and went back and found the meeting on the 14th and watched it.
yeah.
Well, so that was,
Okay.
one of my first questions tonight is what is our process, what is the limit, what are we allowed to do? And I agree, we need a process. And it's rare, you're right, it's not like we do this all the time, but we should have some just high-level way, going forward. I'm not here to derail this particular thing, but I think Craig's right, how do we wanna do this? And like you say, sometimes depending on it might, you hate to box yourself into a certain process because depending on what's going on, maybe something would be more appropriate than another.
I think
So-
it's easier for us to be able to, I always want people to call if they have questions or they hear something or whatever, but if I, you know, I mean, if I don't fully understand like what the process is, because like I trust that we're doing it the right way, because we all demanded that it happen the right way, but it, you know, I don't know.
I think the point of this conversation is that there's a lot of right ways.
Right.
And it's really the way that we choose to do it is gonna be the way that sells the property. And there's gonna be people who think that's fine, and there's gonna be people who think that's not.
Sure, right. Yeah, there's never gonna be 100% satisfaction. I don't pretend to think that there will be.
For me, that focusing on accomplishing the goals that the city has for those properties, like why those properties were purchased in the first place and why they were preserved from the construction project, is what we're attempting to do by selling them right now. We're selling one of them right now and getting the other one ready for sale. So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Now, do we have any, not that I need to bring up any more complicated stuff, but you know, when you buy a lot from the EDA, they have,
Wetland.
but you have to declare what you're gonna use that property for, and you have a time restraint on,
It's a developer's agreement.
It's in our purchase agreement. Those are terms that we can set, and right now, those are part of our draft purchase agreement, yes,
for this piece?
for this piece.
Okay,
Oh, God.
so we'll read about that.
Do you want to hear from me at all?
I do.
Hi, Chris.
I mean, I've listened to all this. So
You've been listening.
I've been an attorney for almost 30 years. I have represented port authorities in real estate transactions, housing and redevelopment authorities in real estate transactions, economic development authorities in real estate transactions, cities in real estate transactions. So I'm an expert in real estate transactions for government.
Thank you.
And so there is nothing in your process that causes me any legal concerns whatsoever. You made a choice to move forward in a certain way, and that process is perfectly acceptable in the eyes of the law. Now there are differences, like the EDA was brought up, for example. There's a specific statutory process for EDAs to sell property. That process does not apply to city government. There's a specific process for port authorities. That process does not apply to city government. There's another different process for HRAs. That process also does not apply to city government. So with regard to the city and the city council, as Mike indicated and has been talked about, you have discretion about what the process you use. It runs the spectrum across the state in terms of how cities do these things. And, you know, as soon as you set a process, you're gonna figure out that process doesn't work because the circumstances for which you are going to do something, that process doesn't work very well for it. So a process that you set is a little bit of a double-edged sword. And I think really it's probably better to determine what that process is at the time and based on the circumstances that you have going at the time you're doing it. You know, government doesn't typically hold property just for fun. Government holds property as a means to clean it up, remove contamination, remove blight, otherwise acquire it as basically a facilitator so that it can be put back on the tax rolls and be developed. And that's what you've got going here. And, you know, you could have gone to a realtor. Most cities don't use realtors, or most governments don't use realtors very often because they don't want to pay realtor fees associated with a transaction. And my experience is that it's pretty rare to use realtors. but you certainly could have advertised the property. You could have gone out for bids, you could have done an RFP. There's lots of things that you could do. But this piece of property, like other properties in any other governmental area, you may have one or more pieces of property, and those properties may sit for years and years and years and years and years with nobody ever making an offer. And a lot of times what happens is somebody has some development use that they want. They notice that there's a piece of city property that's just been sitting there vacant for years, and they come to the city and say, hey, are you willing to sell it? And of course, the city looks at it and goes, yeah, that'd be great. This thing's been sitting vacant for a decade. So there's lots of circumstances that would come into play. And I guess my last point with it is that, again, from a legal standpoint, the process that you used was a perfectly acceptable process. If you want to do something differently in the future, obviously that's in your discretion.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. I had a post-board meeting, discussed more policy changes and more actions for discipline against police officers. That's pretty much all I can disclose here for that. And other than that, have just been fielding comments from people in town and working on stuff like that. So.
Hey,
that's all I
anything
have.
else going on in your life, Jay?
Is it?
Did you start a new job today?
Yeah, I started a new job at the county today, and I did talk with county attorney about conflict of interest or anything like that. There are none, so that's all good.
So you just say congratulations?
You can if you want. You don't have
Okay.
to.
Hey, congratulations.
Thanks. Well, that's interesting.
Driving a plow truck?
I wish. No, climbing towers. You guys have anything?
Just a quick preview. Next meeting, we have a tentative settlement with Ask Me on the contract, and so we'll have that in front of you at your next meeting. And the other thing we were considering doing at your next meeting is having Shane come and give an update on the climate action plan, which seems timely. So, and it looks like there might be lots of things on your agenda next meeting. So, right back at it.
There we go. All right, anything else? Last comments? All right, thank you so much. We are adjourned.